always lose the fight. Try my best, but just don't get it right. Well, I talk a talk that I don't walk, and miss the moments right before my eyes. Somebody with a hurt that I could have helped, somebody with a hand that I could have held, but I just can't see past myself. Lord, help me be a little more like mercy, a little more like grace, a little more like kindness, goodness, love and faith, a little more like patience, a little more like peace, a little more like Jesus, a little less like me. Yeah, there's no denying I have changed, 'cause I've been saved from who I used to be. Even at my best, I must confess I still need help to see the way you see. Somebody with a hurt that I could have helped, somebody with a hand that I could have held, but I just can't see past myself. Lord, help me be a little more like mercy, a little more like grace, a little more like kindness, goodness, love and faith, a little more like patience, a little more like peace, a little more like Jesus, a little less like me. I wanna feed the beggar on the street, love to be your hands and feet, freely give what I receive. Lord, help me be. I wanna put you first above all else, love my neighbor as myself. In the moment no one sees, Lord, help me be a little more like mercy, a little more like grace, a little more like kindness, goodness, love and faith, a little more like patience, a little more like peace, a little more like Jesus, a little less like me, a little more of living everything I preach, a little more like Jesus, a little less like me.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday to you all. I'm Heather, one of the pastors here. And instead of doing an announcement today, I wanted to tell you a little story. Once upon a time, there was a group of people that got together and said, we want to do a different kind of church. We want to create a church for people who may have given up on church, but not on God. That was 25 or so years ago. Yeah. And that's New England Chapel. So we know that every story has a beginning. There's a story, and there's an ask. I'm not going to bait and switch. Every story has a beginning. And when I think back to my beginning here at New England Chapel, when I walked through those doors, I was a young mom. God was always kind of in my life, but I kind of figured I'd best to stay off his radar, like be good enough. He wouldn't notice me. But as a young mom, I felt like, I need to introduce my children to some sort of faith. And a friend told us about this place more than 12 years ago we walked in. And we're asking, if you have a story that you'd like to share about how you started, the beginning of your story here at New England Chapel, and are willing to just record yourself, share a little bit of your story, you can do so. I'm going to put it up on the screen. You can go to nechapel.org/share. because we'd love to hear your story, or you can use that QR code. We appreciate it. We know there's so many amazing stories here, and we appreciate your willingness to perhaps share them. So I'm going to let them get back to what they do awesome, and have a great morning.
All right, so we're still in our Streaming Faith series, and if you were here last week, we were in part 1 looking at the show The Bear, and we watched an awesome clip from this show. So this is part 2 about it's just hard to do the right thing. Last week was it's hard to be human, and this week it's hard to do good. So why don't you stand and join us for our next song? We'd love to hear your voice on King of My Heart.
Let the King of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song. You are good, good. Oh, 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 let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song. You are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you're never gonna let me down. 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 You are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good.
You can take a seat. easy. But staying in love is hard. Hard to be honest and keep our heart open. Be who we truly are, without the excuses, without the facade. There's no pretending. Here in your love, oh Lord, set me free. Oh Lord, set me free.
I'm finally seeing you were here all along. Your love wasn't absent, no. It doesn't come or go.
The image I felt is starting to fail. You're patient with me, lifting the veil, oh Lord, set me free. 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 I let out the sails of my heart. Here I am, here you are. I let out the sails of my heart. Here I am, here you are.
I let out the sails of my heart. Here I am, here you are. I let out the sails of my heart. Oh, here I am, here you are.
I let out the sails of my heart. Oh, here I am, here you are. I let out the sails of my heart. Here I am, here you are. I let out the sails of my heart. Oh, here I am, here you are. I let out the sails of my heart. Here I am, here you are.
You guys want to just stay up here? We'll do a couple more. Bring the coffee in here. That'll be nice. Acoustic cafe. Morning, everyone. If this is your first time, my name is Mike. I'm one of the pastors here, and as Jake introduced, we're in the middle of our summer series. Every summer, we try to take some kind of cultural element, culturally relevant element, and use it to sort of tip off or focus on a big idea from the Bible that's helpful for life and faith. And this summer, we've been doing streaming things, and so it's mostly been streaming TV shows. Next week, we're doing a streaming movie. But we've done Ted Lasso and Shrinking, and last week, and I think a few weeks ago, we did The Bear. This is The Bear Part 2. And last week, if you were here, the topic was, it was a difficult topic, but hopefully we all left on a positive note, but it was hard to be human was the topic. Anybody experience it that last week? Was it hard to be human at all for anybody last week? Yeah, okay, we got a bunch of people. Well, that pretty much sums up not only The Bear, like in every episode of The Bear, it shouts out, it's hard to be human. But it also kind of sums up life in some respects. We could all be wearing the T-shirt, it's hard to be human. And sometimes it's because of other people, sometimes it's because of our circumstances, and sometimes it's just because of our own stories we tell ourselves. Well, this week we're flipping the coin a little bit. Again, it's difficult, serious, but hopefully it'll end on a happy note. This week, we're looking at The Bear again, and along with the hard to be human, every episode of The Bear, you could see that it's hard to do good. That's this week's topic. It's hard to do good, all right? So we get a back-to-back sandwich of loveliness. Hard to be human, it's hard to do good. It's also not only seen in every episode of The Bear, it's also seen in every episode of life. I guarantee you set out to do something good, and you'll come up with all kinds of obstacles. And so to kick this off, we're going to take a look at a video clip. This is right up there for one of my favorite episodes of either season. It's episode 7 called Forks, and it's honing in on the main character, Carmi's cousin, Richie. And so let's take a listen.
Hey, Forks.
No, I'm Richard.
Okay. I'm Garrett, backway staff. You're Forks. Change your shirt. Chef, are we done with the Forks?
Yeah, Chef. Almost, Chef. Let me ask you, every star shine...
First week.
Week?
First week is Forks, and if you get lucky, you make it to Spoons. Can we chill out on the swearing too,
How long
please?
am I supposed to be here for?
A week.
All right. You want me to fork? I'll fork. Not gonna give cousin the satisfaction of coming home early. I can do my time standing on one foot.
So let me get this straight. He's punishing you by making you work at the best restaurant in the world.
Yep. He's punishing me for being ancillary.
Great, let me give you some purpose then. Dry those properly. You see those streaks? That's bad.
Thanks, Junior.
All right, you probably have no idea what's going on if you saw that, but it's a classic hard to do good moment. So Carmi is a world-class chef, and he won Top Chef of the Year award. So like the #1 chef in the world. And he has to move back to Chicago, and he takes this little beef sandwich shop over that his family ran. And throughout the series is really about him trying to like discover himself while he tries to transform not only the business but tries to transform the people around him. He's kind of like the Christ figure in the show. If you can find a Christ figure in The Bear, it's definitely Carmi. He's sacrificing a lot of stuff to bring out the best in everyone around him, and he's trying to give him better processes, better practices. He's trying to develop them into better human beings, and in the process, he just finds episode after episode that's hard to do good. And Richie is a great character. He's kind of a love-to-hate character, and he was like the boss of it before Carmy took over. And now that Carmy's here, he's kind of pushed to the side and doesn't have a ton of value, but Carmy sees his value. And so he pulls a bunch of strings and gets him to the Ever restaurant. Where we just saw that clip. The Ever restaurant is the #1 restaurant in the world at the time. And so, but Richie thinks it's to rub it in his face that he's no good. Richie thinks that he's just trying to show him how far off being a good chef he is. But that's not Carmy's point at all. Carmy's trying to lock him into something new, something different. And right after this scene, it shows pretty much the same scene for day 2, day 3. It's like Groundhog Day. And at the end of day 3, Richie just like unloads on Carmy and is just shouting and cursing and you're such a this and you're such a that, and it looks like all of Carmy's trying to do good is backfiring. But if you hang with the episode, day 4 hits, day 5 hits, day 6 hits, and Richie finally gets it. He latches on to the purpose of the restaurant. And the purpose of the restaurant is to serve others and bring out the best in others. And so he begins to grasp it in a serious way. In fact, by the end of the week, his life actually changes. It's really awesome. And he literally is transformed. How he views the world is transformed. And he even changes his attire, what he wears every day, in everyday life now. So that... And I wish I could have found all the right parts to show the episode a little better. But the episode is this. Carmine really wants Richie to succeed. And so he sends him to this place. Richie thinks it's the worst idea and just lambaste Carmine. It's hard to do good. But in the end, Carmine's efforts prevail, and Richie's really brought out the best. The best is brought out in Richie. So that's a fiction, and some of you guys have seen it, and maybe many of you haven't. And it was a little choppy because I had to take out a few F-bombs. But I think you'll be more familiar with this real-life story. I was trying to think, all right, that's fiction. What about real life? Who is someone who has had some of the biggest impact in history that we can look at and check to see if they're wearing "It's Hard to Do Good" shirt on? And I discovered one really quickly, just thinking through, people throughout history. I thought of Mother Teresa. Does everybody know who Mother Teresa is? You've heard that. All right. She's pretty famous. In fact, she is so famous for doing good that we often will use it as a metaphor for someone being bad. Oh, she's no Mother Teresa, And so Mother Teresa was born in Macedonia, Eastern European, and wanted to be really had a heart for God and a heart for marginalized people. And so she becomes a nun at a really early age, and she eventually gets to go to Calcutta, India, and she discovers just how the outcasts in society are just not cared for at all. In fact, they're invisible. And she noticed people like literally dying on street corners, and people are just walking past them. These are the untouchables. They're not just the low class. They're beyond the low class. They're the outcasts, the Dalits, and it really moves her. And the scripture about the sheep and the goats, whatever you do to the least of these, you're doing for me, just rings in her heart. And so she gets transferred to India, and she begins to spend all her free time ministering to these invisible people, the dying people in the streets of Calcutta. And she really begins to pour into her. In fact, some of the nuns start coming with her, and it starts to pick up a little bit of traction. And she petitions her superiors, and eventually they agree to let her minister full-time in the streets of Calcutta. And she starts this hospice house. It's called the House of Dying. And she begins to bring people in. Some people are sort of healed and saved and get better, and other people die, but they die in loving, caring hands. And she begins to devote her life to these people who are marginalized. And she becomes more and more popular. More and more nuns want to help out, and she establishes this Missionary for Charity. That's the name of the organization the sort of enclave within the Catholic Church that she establishes. And it begins to grow and it begins to take effect, and this is in the late 50s. But the part that I want to read to you is when she passed away in 1997, and a few years later, there's a process to become a saint. First, I'm going to botch these words. Beatification? Is that any good Catholics there? Beatification? And that's you're a really good person. You're a really good person if you hit this, right? But then you need a bunch of other things in order to become a saint. A couple miracles have to be in there, and so there was this. You get assigned sort of like an advocate, like almost like a saint attorney, and they investigate your entire life. They try to find every shred of evidence, every letter you ever wrote, and to try to develop enough evidence to get you canonized. No, is that right? I don't know. Sorry, I will never be a saint. So actually, that's bad theology. Technically, if you believe, you are a saint, okay? We are all saints. We don't need the lawyers, okay? Sorry, little theological rabbit trail there. So anyways, this guy is doing a deep dive into her history, and she discovers letters that she wrote to her mentor. And this is in the middle of the 70s, okay? So she's been at this for over a decade and a half. And this is what she writes. But as for me, the silence, and she's talking about the silence of God. She's talking about spiritual dryness. The silence and the emptiness is so great that I look and I don't see. I listen and I don't hear. My tongue moves in prayer but doesn't speak. And then she asks her mentor, I want you to pray for me that I let God have a free hand in my life. And she goes on to describe that dry spiritual experience in the middle of this amazing ministry. She likens it to hell. She at one point says it has driven her to doubt the very existence of heaven and God. It's hard to do good. This is Mother Teresa. By the time she perseveres, decade after decade, she doesn't let that dry period slow her down or stop her. And when she retired in March of 1997. When she retired, the Missionaries of Charity had over 4,000 sisters and was operating 610 missions in 123 countries. They included hospices and home for people with HIV/AIDS, leprosy, tuberculosis, soup kitchens, children's and family counseling programs, orphanages, and schools. Talk about an impact. I wonder, my list isn't going to be that long. What if in the process of doing good, she realizes that it's hard to do good and she gives up? Think of that. 610 centers that are caring for people that wouldn't receive care otherwise. People are brought to faith, people are brought to health. People who don't make it or die with dignity and people around them. Huge, huge impact. But she writes in more than just one period in her life that she feels as dry as dust. It's hard to do good. There are all kinds of obstacles that are in our way. In Carmine's situation, it was Richie not understanding his purposes, thinking that he was setting him up for failure, setting him up to just show how different he was. And Mother Teresa's, the difficulty came in just personal doubt and dryness, the overwhelming needs of the ministry over and over again. But each one's fictitious, but each one perseveres. Mother Teresa perseveres, and millions of people are impacted. There's another person that you know of that if you were to peel back their robe, they're probably wearing a T-shirt that says, it's hard to do good. That person is Jesus. Let's take a quick look at Mark chapter 6. Jesus it's early in his ministry, and he just is moving from one place to head to his hometown, his home village. And it says, Jesus left there and went to his hometown, accompanied by his disciples. And when the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogues. And many who heard him were amazed. Where does this man get these things, they asked. What's this wisdom that has been given him? What are these remarkable miracles he's been performing? But in the very next breath, he's getting all kinds of pushback. Isn't this the carpenter? We know this kid. Isn't this Mary's son and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? Aren't his sisters right here with us? And they took offense with him. They took offense at him because he was doing good. It's hard to do good. It's hard to do good. Try it. It's hard to do good to your neighbors. It's hard to do good to your family members. It's hard to do good anywhere. I'm not sure. We would have to go on like a theological workshop to try to shop out all the different reasons why it's hard to do good. But I want to figure out, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? Because we live in a time period right now where our schedules are so packed and our lifestyles move so quickly, and the current of autopilot is so strong that the moment we begin to feel resistance in doing good, what do? And it's not worth it. You want to reach out to your aunt who's crabby. Man, it's not worth it. You want to do this thing, but you got a roadblock. I don't have time to deal with this. And so now it's hard to do good is not only external things, but it's also our own situations. And so how do we operate in such a way that we could still do good? The way Carmine did, the way Mother Teresa did, the way Jesus did. Heaven forbid if Jesus would have stopped there and said, I'm done with y'all. I'm going to the beach. I want to tell you one more story that we'll read from the Bible, from the Old Testament, about someone who knew it was also hard to do good. And underneath his robe, he was also wearing a T-shirt. It's hard to do good. And most of you know him, whether you grew up in the church or not, Moses. If you never read the biblical account of Moses, but maybe you saw Disney's Prince of Egypt, it's really those two counts are really close. It's a really accurate account. Disney actually asked a bunch of pastors for help in being true to the tale. But Moses' story is Moses was pretty much groomed to save the Israelites from slavery. And he was sort of taken from his family at a young age, but he was sort of adopted by Pharaoh's family. And so he grew up in Egyptian royalty. And so he knew the workings of Pharaoh, the workings of the government. He had high esteem among the people. But he was also he was also a Hebrew. From Hebrew descent, although I'm not sure how much of his royal people knew that. So he eventually gets tapped on the shoulder by God saying, you are going to be the person I use to bring my people out of slavery. They've been in slavery for decades after decades, hard slavery, just building, making bricks and building things. And so Moses is like, really? And then eventually God says, hey, you're going to do it, so stop complaining. And he sets off for this really good thing. And God shows up in amazing ways. And in Exodus, the book of Exodus, it's all about that. It's about the Hebrews' exodus out of Egypt. And God intervenes. Moses' faith is stoked amazingly because he steps out on a limb and God shows up. He steps out on a limb, God shows up. You have those 10 plagues, you have the parting of the Red Sea, and eventually God's people make it out of Egypt and no one dies. There's no casualties. It's amazing. And on the other side of the Red Sea, Moses is like, all right, we need to stop. I need a personal retreat, people. This is the gospel. This is the Old Testament according to Mike, okay? I need a retreat. And so he decides to climb the mountain and just spend some time with God. Just pray, fast, connect with God. And while he's up on the mountain, he is having an amazing time. He's feeling God's presence. God is speaking to him. The connection is awesome. Meanwhile, the people that he just helped walk out of Egypt, and the people that just watched God do amazing things, decide to do this. They decide to be like, wow, Moses has been gone for a while. Maybe he got eaten by a wolf. He was connected to God. We didn't really know God that well because we've been in slavery so long, so let's just make our own God. And they all take off their jewelry, and they melt it down, and the shape that pops up is in the form of like a little calf, and so the golden calf. And so they put this calf up on an altar and say, this is our God. This is the God that brought us up out of Egypt. Now, that sounds crazy to us, but remember, idolatry was all over the place in the ancient Near East, all right? So it's not that crazy to them. But can you imagine that? All right, think about it this way. If the Israelites are children, and Moses is their parent, and you just took them to Disney World, and then you took them to Orlando, Universal Studios, and then you're just like, hey guys, I just need a moment. I'm gonna go take a tour of this grapefruit orchard, whatever. And you come back and they're fighting and they're like, la, la, and you're like, Mom, you hate us, Dad, you hate us, blah, 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 blah. That's like that in spades. And so Moses doesn't realize this yet. He is on a spiritual high, and he's like, God is great. I love this job. And then, boom, he comes smack into full-blown idolatry, full-blown craziness. And he takes his robe off, and there is a T-shirt that says, it's hard to do good. And Moses is just furious, and he's just devastated. And God connects with him and says, hey, don't worry, Moses. I'm still going to fulfill my promise. They're going to make it to the promised land. You're going to lead them. It's going to be great. I'll make sure I guide you, and I'll make sure I protect you. But Moses realizes that God didn't say, I'm going with you. And so this is where our scripture picks up. Moses says to the Lord, you have been telling me, lead these people, but you have not let me know who you will send with me. Are you going? You have said, I know you by name, and you have found favor with me. Then if you are pleased with me, teach me your ways so I may know you. All right, that's interesting. That's interesting. He just did amazing things with God. He just spent weeks on top of a mountaintop with God. And the one thing he's asking for right now is that he would continue to find favor with God and know God's ways. And then he pokes at God. And this is great. This just shows the nature of God so much and his patience with us and his gentleness with us. Moses says, remember, this people is your people. I'm not related to the, maybe distant, but hey, this is your job. This is your project. The Lord replied, my presence will go with you. So he said, all right, I'm back on. I was just going to make sure you knew the pathway, and I was going to protect you from afar, but I am with you in the camp. My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. But Moses doesn't stop there. Moses says to him, if your presence does not go up with us, don't send us. He doubles down. Keep going. How will anyone know that you are pleased with me and your people unless you go with us? And the Lord said to Moses, I will do the very thing you have asked because I am pleased with you and I know you by name. Then I know it's kind of quick in this kind of reading, but think about this for a quick second. Moses just sort of arm-twisted God into going with him. And God agrees, and God says, I'm pleased with you. I know you. And Moses pushes it one more step further. Moses says, now show me your glory. This is the money right here. This is the money. Moses knows the people. He just experienced firsthand how hard it is to do good. And forget about Pharaoh and Pharaoh's armies and the Red Sea and all that. That's just circumstances. We're talking about human nature. It's hard to do good with these people. And he knows the only way he could persevere, the only way he's going to make it through with them, because it's going to be hard to do good tomorrow, and it's going to be hard to do good the next day, and it's going to be hard to do good the next week and the week after that and the next year. The only way he knows that he can succeed is if he knows the heart of God. And so he says, show me your glory. Talk about a forward ask. And God capitulates. And the Lord said, I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you. And he experiences God in a powerful way, and the story continues. If Moses would have been like, you guys made a golden calf out of your earrings? What in the world? It's hard not to. If Apple TV was writing that story, there would be F-bombs all over the place. If he would just say, I'm done with you guys. I can't believe it. I can't believe what we just went through. I can't believe all the ways God showed up. And now you're doing this? You're turning your back on me and him? What in the world? I am done. I'm going to the beach. If he did that, most of the Old Testament wouldn't have been written. And I'm sure God would find a way to sneak Jesus in there somehow, because we kind of need him as human beings. But luckily, he perseveres, and he's able to persevere over and over and over again. If you open Moses' closet, all you see is one robe and 30 T-shirts that says it's hard to do good. And how is he able to navigate that? He's able to navigate that because he has tasted God's love and goodness and mercy and forgiveness. And he knows that's the only way he's going to persevere. And so he says, I need to know you're coming with me. I need to know your presence is going to be here. But that's not enough. I want to know your ways. Let me in on who you are. But that's not good enough. I need to see for myself how good you are. And then he's able to walk right through. It is amazing to do good things. It is amazing to help family. It is amazing to help friends and neighbors. It is amazing to sacrifice time or money or stuff and use it and leverage it for good purposes and watch God be a part of that and watch God change minds and hearts through that. But it is so hard to do good. It is so hard to do good. You'll get people who are offended that you're doing good. You'll get people who will question your motives for doing good. How many of you have a family member who has questioned your motives for helping another family member? It is hard to do good. But there's one thing that will give you Teflon. There was one thing that will... All the metaphors I can think of are dumb. You want to hear the metaphor I was just thinking of? Like polyurethane you, all right? So that It just rubs right off, washes right off. But nobody wants to be polyurethane, so it's not a good metaphor. There is one thing that will shelter you from the hardness of doing good, and it's the love of God. It's the hope, it's the mercy, it's the grace. It's the reminder that you're not alone and that you're doing what you're made to do. You were made in God's image and made to partner with God, made to do the things that God does, and that is good. Carmi stuck with it. Thank goodness, because season 2 was awesome. Mother Teresa stuck with it. Many, many people were affected and still are. Jesus stuck with it, and we're all changed because of it. Moses stuck with it. Will you stick with it? You stick with it by daily saying, God, I want to see you. I want to know your ways. Show me your goodness. Help me through this. The number one obstacle you're going to confront is your own personal I needed another cup of coffee this morning. Not pleasure, your own comfort. Because to do good means you're going to get, if you could just do whatever you want to do that, and have all the same pleasure and comfort and experience, to do good means you're going to step aside in that. You're going to give up something. You're going to enter awkwardness. You're going to have a conversation with someone you don't want to have a conversation with. You're going to extend yourself in ways that might be judged. And so remember who you are and why you're doing it. And you'll push past the sacrifice of your creature comforts. And then when the going gets tougher, remember you're not alone. And no matter how many setbacks, no matter how dry you feel, no matter how offensive you become in the eyes of other people, God are with you. You can never do wrong in His eyes when you're doing good. We were made for it. But I feel like we avoid it like the plague because it's so difficult. But when we connect with God and let Him be the guiding force of our doing good, we experience Him. We become better, and the world around us becomes better. Let me pray for us. Heavenly Father, I would sell my car right now and walk every day if you would grant me this one prayer, that we would all know how personal and relatable you are, how you want into every moment of our lives. God, I pray that for us, that we know you, that we begin to know your ways, your values, and we begin to walk in those ways. No matter what obstacles we face, no matter what judgments or objections or difficulties. Help us to this extent, I pray, in Jesus' name, amen.
Let's stand for our final song. You give life, you are love. our lungs. So we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only.
You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise and pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only.
All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only.
Can go with this blessing from Hebrews 10. It says, let us hold on firmly to the hope we profess, because we can trust God to keep his promise. Let us be concerned for one another, to help one another, to show love and to do good. Let us not give up the habit of meeting together, as some are doing. Instead, let us encourage one another all the more. Have a great week, everyone.